Everything you need to know about products and services that can improve your life. This is Experts on Call on CL 650.
Welcome back. I'm Tony Giavento, your host, and we have with us in the studio Gordon Lee from CMW Insurance Brokers and Albert Atwell from CanStar Restorations, and we're talking about homeowner insurance, what happens when you have a claim, what happens with respects to restoration, who's responsible for repairs, and how the insurance kind of sources it all out, and what your liabilities are. So we said we'd come back and we'd talk about what the Strata Corporation is going to do in the event of a claim, but let's just start, Albert, from the perspective of we have water dripping from your ceiling. There's somebody who lives upstairs from you. There's water dripping through the ceiling. Step by step, what needs to be done here?
Well, the first thing we want to do is, of course, introduce ourselves and get familiar with the whole scenario, and then, act on stopping the water immediately. So that may include devising a way to access a unit that maybe there's no access to due to a homeowner being away, going through the proper channels to do that. And then once we get in there, we can shut it down, and then we can start to assess the damage and what we need to do to dry the building out or repair it, whatever.
So think of the scenarios. We could have water from a pipe break. We could have water from an appliance failure, a fixture failure, a toilet tank, something like that. We could have water. Well, there was one that we had a few years ago of a pet at home that pushed over a 100-gallon fish tank. That produced a lot of water. We could have a roof leak. That results in water. There could be a leak in some other part of the building. So, there are lots of potential origins where water can come from. So the source, getting to the source and getting the water terminated as quickly as possible is essential.
Oh, definitely. And what that does is it also mitigates the loss and creates, an easier scenario for everybody to clean up. So the quicker you get on that, the faster, we can get on to everything and keep it down to a bare minimum, if you will.
There's an impact or a difference between what kind of water it is? So toilet backup or a sewage backup in a unit versus just clear water from a pipe break?
Yeah, most definitely. There's many different ways you can look at it. One, you want to, if we're there within the first 24, let's say,
right,
that we're usually dealing, depending on the source. Now, if it's coming from your toilet and it's backing up, we have a raw sewage situation. So
right,
that's dealt with accordingly. If it's a pipe break or a cracked toilet tank or something to that effect, somebody's dog turned on the faucet, what have you. Now that's clean water. If we're there within 24 hours, usually we can do a lot of the repairs depending on certain materials with a drying process. So it keeps it down to a real quick way to go about it, if you will.
So first, step one, stop the water.
Yes.
However the parties are doing it. Now, what if the water originates from an emergency sprinkler system that's failed?
If you have an emergency sprinkler system that's failed, it has to be shut off by the proper authorities. This isn't something that any person can just go and turn that off. You have to be a proper authority to go in and turn that off. So therein lies sometimes an unfortunate situation, because in order for that to happen, depending where the shutoffs are, that particular system can run for an extended period of time, and they do have the ability to put out large amounts of water. So
any idea what the flow rate is?
I'm not 100% sure, but I think it can go up as high as about 135 gallons a minute. Now, I might be a little off on my numbers, but so if you want to use that, so let's say for argument's sake, it takes 25 minutes for the fire department to get there. Do the math.
Right.
That's a lot of water. You could have 10,000 gallons of water with a very minimum amount of time,
which could easily flood an entire high-rise.
Very easily. Usually gravity wins in the end, so it's going to go down. If it's on the 20th floor, you can guarantee it's going to find its way down until it saturates or is absorbed into everything. At 10,000 gallons, it's going to make it from 20, it's going to make it down to the bottom, almost guaranteed.
So that's one of the liabilities, I think, that strata owners fail to understand, is that when you live collectively and you live above each other and beside each other, an insurance claim generally is not just isolated to one unit. It compounds exponentially as it adds more units in the building, which makes the risk of insurance that much higher, of course.
Oh yeah, and then you have the as Gordon was saying earlier, you have all the situations where you've got all the independent insurances involved. Now you're not dealing with just one homeowner. You may be dealing with as many as 30.
Right.
and 30 adjusters, 30 other people. It's quite a large amount of people that can get involved in that situation.
Sounds like a project management industry opportunity is what it sounds like.
Yeah, I agree.
So Gordon, step 2, we've got the insurance, we've got the water shut off. Step 2 is contact the insurance provider. Why would we do that?
Well, because first of all, as the insurance company wants their adjusters assigned right away and be on site to see what's going on, and also to get the restoration companies. Every company's a little bit. Some of them have preferred restoration companies, some of them don't. But you kind of want that organized up front versus later. And if you do it later, what's going to happen? You might have 6 different restoration companies show up because different homeowners has got different people they've called. Then you got the property manager and then an insurance company. So when you have all these different people running over each other, it's not going to work. It's going to slow down the process. So really you want that organized up front. So once that adjuster is there, they'll say, okay, fine, these guys are there. We're approved. They're approved to go ahead. Or if not, they're going to say, look, you know what, we need to make a change right away.
So it helps to make the authority and the business process move quicker.
Yes.
If you've engaged your insurance broker and your adjuster quickly, so that they are aware of what's going on. What happens if the amount turns out to be below the claim?
Usually, if that's the case, then the individual unit owners,
right,
and or the property manager will end up have to deal with the repairs itself.
Right. Right. So if the amount's below the deductible, it's in my strata lot, I'm going to be responsible for it. So I would hang up from you as the Strata Corporation Insurance and then call you back as the homeowner and say you have my homeowner policy.
Yes. Or better yet, I would say, Tony, no problem. We've also contacted your homeowner's policy. So
right.
Therefore, you're looked after either way. And
right.
we'll get that looked at and determine who's going to pay what. So you don't need to worry about that.
Right. Right. You mentioned earlier about homeowners insuring their contents. How do they value those?
That's interesting. I mean, I think most homeowners just kind of evaluate on their own. As a broker, usually we would give them a booklet and say, if you're not sure, here's a booklet, and it gives you a breakdown of different rooms of different, possible items you have, and you want to fill it out yourself. From my experience, most people just come in and kind of just guess at a number. My experience, I think majority of people underinsure the content, to be the truth, to tell you the truth, because I've seen claims go up to $60,000, and you look at the list of what they claim, it's like, God, it's not many items really on there, but it's all the odds and ends that really add up.
Right.
So that's one of the things. But I think having some homeowners insurance is better than none. So good starts to get some homeowners insurance.
Well, and especially for the liabilities that you may be exposed to collectively through the strata.
Yes.
That's a huge part of this. And the Strata Property Act doesn't mean that you were negligent. The Strata Property Act only simply implies and requires that you may have been responsible for the claim, which then allows the Strata Corporation to attempt to recover that amount from you. Yes. So that's another reason to ensure that you have your homeowner policy in place. So we're on step 2, contact the insurance provider. We've called you. One of the questions that we frequently get from property managers and homeowners is, we don't want to call the insurance company because we don't want to file a claim because we don't want our insurance to go up. How do you answer that question? Because invariably what we see the result of is they also don't end up doing proper restoration to the building. The damages are not properly restored. Everybody starts disputing in the building over who's going to be responsible for what claim. So how do you know it's above the deductible or not unless you've actually put an adjuster on the job to look at the damages and assess it?
Yeah, usually we recommend them, go ahead and we'll have an adjuster look at it to coordinate everything. If it doesn't work, the claim gets withdrawn. But, we do have stratas or property managers that says, absolutely we don't want to do that. So my advice to them is, what? Talk to your restoration company that you've sent in and get an estimate right away. Most of people like Albert, has been in this business for a long time, lots of experience, and just by taking a look, generally have an idea. If I said, Albert, do you think this is going to be over $10,000? I don't think Albert necessarily say right to the dollar, say this is what the repair costs. But
no, we can give a bulk estimate.
Yeah.
So, because one of the problems with strata corporations, and this is a challenge, is the strata council is really reluctant to file the claim because they're being mindful of the risks and future costs, right? Under the contracts, however, they do have an obligation anyhow to report events and claims or incidents that may result in future damage under their policy. So it's not like they can just hide this from anybody. But the difficulty that we end up having is they don't do that, and then somebody within the strata says, it doesn't look like it's more than $3,500 of damage. You can take care of it yourself. If they'd actually hired the restoration company or had you come in to do an assessment of the damage, you would have found out quite possibly that it was significantly more anyhow, because neither the strata management company or the strata corporation are qualified to be able to assess the values for construction and claims restoration.
And I think that comes back to what Gordon was saying earlier about each insurances, or most of them anyway, have preferred contractors that they use, and we work within those guidelines so that we can give pretty accurate quotes on where this is going to go. And that advice is important to the strata, because then they're not burning time, wasting their time and deciding what to do. Put it in the hands of the professionals. They put the professionals in play, and everybody gets the right information and they get directed in the right way. And I think what's happened is some people maybe go with a less of a preferred contractor and maybe get themselves into a situation that doesn't pay dividends at the end. The job doesn't work out the way they maybe wanted it to.
Or they don't go to a contractor at all and they just download it onto the owners and say, you got to deal with this, forgetting that owners are named insureds by virtue of the policy anyhow, and they can just phone the insurance company directly. So that creates some other scenarios for the providers and the users. But yeah, I totally agree. One of the difficulties is being able to know when it's just reasonably just the owner's responsibility, and understanding the limit of damages. Take a it's hard for you to assess this, but 100 gallons of water in a unit upstairs that flows through a ceiling to the unit downstairs. And estimate. You've got a call. You're there within 24 hours. What do you think the impact is going to be?
Well, in a situation like that, without seeing anything, just throwing it out. So say, for instance, they have laminate floors. Let's throw that in. Most people do nowadays. So you're looking at, for an average one, $4,000.
Right.
So now to dry the structure, let's say $7,000.
Right.
So now to repair the damages and whatnot, you have insulated ceilings in between, and we don't know what else we might run into. There shouldn't be any structural issues, but now the repair bill is going to sit at probably 10. So now 100 gallons is just going to cost you, sorry, didn't do the math, but say 23,000.
Right.
And relatively a simple little loss.
Right.
It can add up very quickly, and I think people misunderstand that the amount of materials that are sometimes involved in that process. It looks real simple, but it's always not what it seems.
And that's one of the problems with water, is it gets into all the spaces, all the cracks. It contaminates insulation. It damages drywall. It causes problems that are furtherly hidden in the walls and behind cupboards and counters.
It can run in conduits. It can get into vents, and like I've worked on one where it's 100 yards away from the loss.
Right.
In a high rise. So 100 yards away from the loss, and it's run through pipes. Nobody even expects that. So
we did we've contacted the insurance provider. We've got the water shut off. Next step, we've got the basic restoration done, is the emergency cleanup. So you're on site now, and you're given instructions. So the first stage is getting rid of the water damage that has occurred. Just the water.
Basically what I'd want to do is we'd want to extract all the standing water, right? Let's deal with that now, because that's the first thing that we want to do. That way the insurance adjusters can get there. We get it into a drying process. Then all the parties that are involved, be it in personal insurances, building insurance, we start to have clarity on, I need to do this, I need to remove that, make sure everybody's in agreement, and then we move forward from there.
Right. And so that's the emergency water abatement, right? That's where you get the water out of the environment. So here's where we have, I think, the big question for many homeowners. How long do we wait before we get this activated? Clearly, the best answer from the insurance company's provision is do this immediately, right? Within hours, you want somebody on site doing restoration. But how long can we wait before this becomes a much more compound problem?
Well, the rule of thumb in our industry, and it's been basically what it is for as long as I've been in it, is 24 hours is clean, 48 hours is gray. But now what's happened is then at 72 it goes black. The 48 to 72 is basically going to be considered black, because by the time you deal with everything, it's just not worth the risk. So you're looking at 24 and 72 hours is kind of your window right there. So 24 is what you want to, be on site and dealing with this stuff in 24 hours.
So when you come home after you've been on vacation to discover there was a flood and it sat in your apartment for 7 days and nobody did anything about it?
No, you're going to run into a situation that's going to be a little bit more of a challenge. Hopefully in that situation, you have had people that are doing periodic reviews of your home.
Yes.
And making sure that everything's functioning properly, and then everything should be okay. It's just a matter, usually you can deal with it at that point. But in that particular situation, you're probably going to see a lot more removal and demolition because the materials are not usually salvageable at that point. So the majority.
And mold and algae. Things will start to grow and
yeah,
build,
we could get into the growth
cleaning,
factor,
right?
but that being said, we'd want to involve certain other parties to do tests and sampling to make sure, the insurance will want to know what's going on at that point, because I'm going to push for a lot more removal than maybe we normally would. And especially if it was a clean water break but sat for 7 days, it changes everything because you've got the growth factor involved.
The reason why I ask that is because I have an email from the column sitting on my desktop to respond to of people who've just had that happen. They've just come back from holidays and they think the water's been in their unit for about 6.5 days. And it was a slow leak from the unit upstairs. Nobody realized that the line on the toilet tank upstairs was leaking and running down through the extrusion for the pipe and into the unit downstairs, and it's pretty gruesome. So probably it sounds like the unit will be stripped out, I would say.
In most cases, yeah, and then there may be a form of, sometimes you get involved in air clearances and whatnot, but it all depends on where the project goes at that point and the severity of it. Some aren't as bad as others. You'd be amazed at how sometimes they are not as bad as others, but they can get there quickly.
Okay. I'm Tony Giventu. This is Key Pacific's Talk About Strata on 650 Sea Isle. We'll be back. We got as far as step 3. We still have to get into the what are we going to do after we've done the work here and try and figure out who's responsible and who's going to be paying the bills. And we'll be back right after these messages.
There's still more ahead with Experts on Call on CL 650.